Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the third middle grades conversation of the 2023-2024 school year. My name is Don Taylor. I teach sustainability at Main Street Middle School in Montpelier. And I would like to welcome my colleagues and fellow educators for this afternoon's discussion about trauma-informed education, personalized learning, and how we're building relationships with students at this juncture of the school year. This work is supported by the Middle Grades Collaborative, and I'm going to pass it to Meg to introduce herself. And then Meg, once you're all set, you can pass it to the next person. Okay, thanks everybody. Let's get going.
Awesome. Thank you, Don. Nice to see you all as well. My name is Meg O'Donnell. I teach humanities to 7th and 8th graders at Shelburne Community School. Kyle.
Thanks, Meg. Kyle Chadburn. I'm the Access and Opportunities Coordinator for the Orleans Central Supervisory Union, former middle level humanities teacher. And I'll pass on to Kevin.
Hi, everybody. Billy Hunt. I'm a 5'8" journalist on Swift House at Williston Central School. Did we get everybody done?
We did. Like I was saying beforehand, a few people couldn't join because of their schedule, which is no surprise at this time of the year. But speaking of this time of the year, we're headed into our first big break, and just a little check-in question. How are folks doing in their work? And what's an issue that you're thinking about in your learning community? What's something that you're working on or thinking about? And I'll give you a little bit of time to consider that. And then we'll start with Kyle, and then we'll move around to Meg and Kevin, and I'll just put that chat order in the window. Kyle, you can start whenever you're ready.
All right, I'll dive right in. So as far as how things are going, I think we, like most years, there's a little bit of a bumpy start, but I think people are starting to kind of get into the routines and getting themselves a little bit more centered as the time has passed. From my seat where I am in the central office supporting curriculum instruction and equity for our district, I think my my focus right now, an issue that I'm focused on, is just thinking about how do we make things sustainable for folks who are new to education, folks who are less experienced in education. We have about 60% of our staff across our schools right now are within the first 3 years of their teaching experience. So we have a lot of new and less experienced staff. So how do we support those folks while not forgetting about our folks who have that experience and are also taking on a lot of the extra responsibility, knowing that those folks that are new aren't ready for that yet. So it's really having kind of the two ends of the spectrum, and how do we find the right supports to put in place for each of those contingents of people so that then they can turn and support their students as best they can. So that's where I'm at right now.
Thank you. Meg?
Yeah. Boy, this is a big question. I think an issue that we're trying to, or that seems very present for us right now, is really around, for the most part, it's been an okay start to the year, like all things considered. We've started to see some student behaviors that we hadn't necessarily been seeing in the past beginnings of the last couple of years. So this has felt like a really nice beginning, or calm beginning, I guess I should say. I think the thing that we're wrestling with is for those kids for whom, even in a good year, right? Like we've got our adults are on board. We have adults with experience. We're collaborative and cooperative with one another. And there are for some students, school doesn't work for them. And the system seems to struggle to know how to meet their needs because they might not check all the boxes to require, say, like, a behavior interventionist, right? Or they don't necessarily fall into the special ed realm of things. And so that's something that as a system we're really struggling with, is when school doesn't meet the needs of particular individuals, it really falls on the classroom teachers to figure that out. And we're a fairly veteran staff down here, and we're struggling. We're struggling to support some of these kids, and we've had a tragedy in our community in the last couple of weeks that has really just exacerbated some of those behaviors and some of the reality for some of our kids. So that's what I'm thinking about right now, is what happens when the system doesn't work for unique students. Sorry, unique
right.
situation.
Thank you, Kevin.
Very similar to what Meg's been sharing. We've had a really great start to the school year overall. It's a it feels like our culture is kind of getting back to where we want it since COVID, and since just things kind of took a dip there for a little bit. We have a really strong 8th grade group who seems just really committed to what Swift House is all about, and just like our community and caring about each other. And the 5th graders are seeing that, which is great. And it's just like you can tell that it's starting to build on itself. But yeah, same. And I think just like some of our routines are back in place. Like we just finished up our big theater unit, which was just fully student run, student led, and gave them those opportunities. Shout out Don, your daughter absolutely crushed it as Alice in Wonderland. One of the best ones I've seen. But similar to what Meg's saying, just like the systems issue, I think there's so many things happening in our schools that we all identify the problem, and we're just like, how can we help these kids? And we don't have the means of supporting all these students. And that's just kind of point blank what it is. We don't have the resources. We don't have the staff to support the number of needs that there are. And I've been thinking more at the classroom level, like little like surface level stuff that's been happening. Like we've been dealing with a lot more whereabouts issues recently, just like students kind of wandering out of class and taking a lap when they need it. And for me, I'm like, all right, what can we do in class to make things more engaging, where kids don't want to leave class? They're like so invested in the work and want to be there with their peers that like they're not going to want to miss 5 minutes because they're ducking out. So I've been really thinking about like, all right, are the tasks I'm giving in class like super purposeful and engaging, and are the students feeling the purpose? Like, from my end, it's like, yeah, of course we have a purpose. It's lined up with the learning targets and it has this, and this, but like if they're not feeling that, there's a disconnect. So I'm just thinking about more ways I can get student feedback on a more regular basis, and just other ways that I can, again, from my end, the things I can actually control, right, are the lessons I'm giving and the tasks I'm creating. So just trying to think outside the box a little bit and go back to square one with some of that stuff.
Well, I really appreciate what everybody is talking about, and I guess next time I'm going to ask a much easier connector question, like what's your favorite dessert or something like that, because many of the issues that you actually just brought up are tied, I think, intrinsically to some of what we're talking about today, which includes relationships, personalized learning, and how we can use that to address some of the trauma that our students, I think, continue to bring with them, both from the pandemic, from social issues that we might not be aware of, and then also some of the things that are happening in schools when students can't get the support that they need. And I just want to point out 2 things that sort of are in my brain and that I've been thinking about. One is I attended Up for Learning's annual meeting virtually yesterday. And I don't know if anybody did that, but Lindsay Hallman, the executive director, had a really, I think, important opening statement about empowerment and student voice, and getting, as Kevin mentioned, getting kids engaged and really creating equitable education opportunities where students and adults are at the table together. And I'm actually have an email out to try and get that recording, because I think it's a very important. And I think that also is tied to, on December 7th, I'll mention this later, there is a personalized learning sort of comment session at the Vermont State the State House. And I think it's really important to think too about we're 10 years out from Act 77 and personalized learning. And what I've been thinking about lately is how far away it seems we are from those moments where we were talking about empowerment, engagement. And to me, it came down to students as an agent of their own learning and having students set goals. And I know some of us are still doing this, but also having students deeply reflect on what was, what was happening both in school and in their lives. And then to me, the purpose of proficiencies was, to borrow a phrase from Maura Weiler, was to create task neutral curriculum where kids could be, doing interested in their very, subjects that they were engaged with. And then we would have proficiencies that were not tied to, a specific subject, but rather allowed kids some freedom to choose and thus become empowered and challenged to identify their strengths and some of the things that they needed to grow with. So those are things that are on my mind. And I also feel like I'm in a much different position where after teaching literacy and humanities for so long, I'm now in a fully project-based environment. And as Kevin mentioned, that really engages kids. And once you have that engagement piece, then you can leverage, I think, a lot of the more difficult or challenging academic tasks. And but I'm also thinking about how I can be more detailed in my daily teaching, my craft, to support kids and to make it clear about what we're trying to accomplish. And as Kevin mentioned, what's our purpose? What's our purpose? What are we doing here? Why are we doing it? And getting feedback from the kids so that they can build that community and build that culture that allows you to really develop these dynamic programs that make kids want to come to school. And so we have three main discussion questions framed around this personalized learning, building relationships, and how that can support our trauma-informed education. And I guess the first question I have is, what are you doing right now in your classrooms or in your practice to build relationships with students, and maybe some of those students who aren't seemingly getting everything they need? Like, even though there's all these challenges, both with staffing and support, how are you folks building relationships and making learning environments where students do want to come in and students can feel safe and secure and they're ready to learn? And I will let any one of you start and then pass it off to the next person.
I'll jump in.
You got it, Meg?
I got you, Kev. Well, we're currently working on an identity unit. And so students have been building they've been writing a personal narrative and creating a selfie project. And something that feels accessible for lots of kids is obviously, like, anytime you give them an opportunity for choice and to shine a little light on who they are and what they're interested in, what they value, what they're passionate about. That has just been a lot of fun. Or at least I think it's been fun. And I think the kids have appreciated it. I think they come into class ready to go. We usually have a routine in my class, because we have hour-long classes where we do a warm-up, and the warm-up can be anything from like global to categories, like any quick little game. And they've been like, can we just get right to work? We got a lot to do. We just want to get right to work. And I think that just indicates an eagerness, like they feel engaged. They have some ownership for the work. So I think that's been a nice way to that's telling me that this task feels good. And I've also been trying to develop a strategy where I'm meeting the needs of the kids in the room individually. I mean, it looks ridiculous, but like, they put their name up on the board and I literally like ping pong around the room. And I'm pretty amazed at like with just a couple of quick reminders of what they need to do before I get to them, that I'm able to hit like a good, at least 2/3 of a class in that time. And that feels good for me. Like that's empowering for me because I feel effective. Like I feel like, oh, I could do this. Like I can meet one-on-one with kids in an hour and get through a good portion of them. And I think I'm just really thinking about this out loud, but that personal efficacy, my personal efficacy, is strengthened when I'm feeling like I'm meeting the needs of my learners, and so I'm able to, I have a couple of kids who might need more time than others, but that feels efficacious. So I think that goes a long way to building community for kids feeling like, hey, you're welcomed here. We're moving the needle for as many of you as we can in a short amount of time. I'll let the next folks jump in.
Happy to go now. Thanks, Meg. Yeah, one thing that we're actually doing is a school-wide initiative, which I love. We're calling them positive postcards because our mascot is the Wildcat. And we're actually taking, every time we have PD, we take at least 15 minutes in the beginning of it to fill out these little postcards to our students. And we're trying to do we each do 2 to 3 every single week, which adds up quickly on a team, and just send them out and just kind of a handwritten note we want to make sure every student by the end of this, next couple of months gets a handwritten note sent home, just about how much we appreciate them and value them. And like, that just has felt really good in terms of like a whole school community and approach. I'm like, that's out of all the PD we've done, I'm like, let's spend more time doing that stuff. Like that feels really good and purposeful and meaningful. So love that. And as a school-wide approach, as a team-based thing, on Swift House, I know we were just talking about like our theater unit. Like those project-based pieces have just been such an opportunity where, again, it's so messy and chaotic, but such an opportunity just like connect with kids at more of that personal level and just kind of hang out with them and see how they're doing with like what their brainstorm is, how they're tackling this engineering challenge, or how they're doing with their lines in theater, and just like the excitement around that. But again, it's like finding that balance, because where that structure is kind of chaotic for those few weeks that we're in that, there's certain students that like that doesn't work for them, or students with one-on-one paras, where it's like, we need to get back to some sort of schedule and structure here because this is tough. So it's like, how do we bring that level of connection in a regular way that's also beneficial for all students? Has been on my mind a lot. And with the end of the trimester, we're ramping up the PLP process, which we have PLP time every week, but just really having kids tighten up their PLP sites. And what's great is like the kids are really getting at the excitement around their conferences that they'll be leading. And I love the pushback sometimes, like, why are we doing this again? And it's like being able to have a conversation about goal setting and reflecting on growth, and like how transferable that all is, and the fact that they're able to make their own goals that are habits-based, so they can apply them inside and outside of school. And just having stories from our alumni who've come back to us and just said like, hey, that was really helpful when I was in high school or even college or in the workplace. Of like, I feel like I was in a really good spot with knowing who I was as a person and a learner, and set goals for myself. So it's just great to have those conversations again. I think that definitely helps us connect at a deeper level as well, and have the students feel the same way. All right, I'll pass off to the next person.
Kyle.
Sure. So one of the things we've focused on quite a bit this year is, from a coaching standpoint, is helping our teachers to think about how do we take the what we typically think of as the first 6 weeks of school and embed it into what we do on a daily basis throughout the school year. And so how do we take those practices of getting to know students and setting routines and structures for them, and just keep cycling back and making that a regular part of what we're doing all the time? So how do we take kind of that advisory ethos and build it into daily practice, so that it's not just this one particular chunk of time in the morning or in the afternoon or whenever your advisory meets, but rather we're doing routine check-ins as they come into classrooms, and how's everybody doing? How can we support you moving forward with your day? Was the morning really rough? How can we help you to reset? How can we take a mindful moment and kind of get back to a place where you're ready to move forward? And that's been a lot of work, especially with newer teachers who are maybe not as familiar with some of those practices and are just kind of getting acquainted with them. But I think we're making progress. Another area that's been, I think, really a lot of fun and healthy way to build relationships is a couple of years ago, Andrea Grattan and I started a clubs program at Orleans Elementary, which is one of our 6 K-8 schools in our district, in which students were generating ideas for clubs that would happen during the day. So from an equitable standpoint, everybody can participate. There's no transportation issues or anything like that. And building that into our schedule. So students come up with the ideas for the clubs, and then we find adults who feel comfortable facilitating. Maybe they have a passion for that same thing. And it's a really informal space where the adult isn't really the guide or the facilitator or the teacher anymore, but is just another participant in the club. And so they're just getting together, they're sharing space, and they're doing some kind of activity and trying to grow and learn together with that particular thing. And that is now kind of expanded, and it's taken on its own little forms in all of our other K-8 schools. So they all have some form of a club program built into their week. And then I would say the other piece that we've really been focusing on building capacity in our teachers is kind of connecting back to what you were talking about, Meg, with how do we set up structures, and this sort of alludes to something that'll come up later, I think, with personalized learning, but how do we have structures in our classrooms that allow students to be independent enough to allow us to then check in with them as individuals and not always have to feel like, we're working with the whole group or even small groups, but really have those personal check-in times. And so what are the structures that we can put in place, the procedures we can put in place that empower teachers to take that time and make those connections while also allowing students to keep moving forward at a pace that's right for them. So a lot of work being done around those kinds of things, and we're seeing progress. However incremental, we're seeing progress. So, and Joe, I don't know if you were here for the prompt, but I imagine Don will fill you in.
Yeah, and so Joe, I think I typed this in the chat, is we're just, what are you doing to continue building relationships at this time of the year, and thinking about like personalization relationships and how that can be a part of trauma-informed practice. And you've heard other commentary. What's happening in your learning community?
Thanks, Don. I would say that I think we all benefit from something that I don't believe is a practice everywhere, and that is that we have the same young people for at least 2 years, and some of us even more. And for building relationships, that's a key element, is the ability to spend time and grow together as we're going through the learning activities and just everything that happens during those years. So that's a key element. I was meeting with a science teacher from the high school this morning, and she was lamenting how she has students for a semester and is struggling. And she's a great teacher. And the struggle is that it's taking until November to really establish relationships in a way that everybody seems to be getting on a similar page. And then it's only a few months and the semester ends for them. And so they're struggling with just the structure in the high school. And we benefit from the opposite of where we have students for a longer period of time. Things we did this year, I think I've already talked about, and we started a unit in the beginning of the year. It was called The Purpose of School. And so we were intentional about, why are we here? Let's talk about it. Let's try to all get lined up if we can. And then we went to components of supportive communities. And we started examining what makes community and here, but also what makes community in other settings. And then from that, we went out into the community of Brattleboro, and we did some exploring of different community structures and how they exist and how they're actually contributing to making things better for the people of our area. So we're pretty intentional about getting after all that stuff right in the beginning. We just finished we do a lot of project-based learning. Don is always promoting that, and that's really helpful. And we just finished a few projects, and so we're having conversation right now. Today was the day. What are we going to do next? And so I'm talking with them about it. What do you want to do next? Here's what we just finished: standing in front of class and talking to people and making eye contact and presenting information and all the processing and all that sort of. So we did that. We're pretty good at it. So what else do we need to get ready in order to feel like we're gaining skills that are good for us now, but can help us in the future as well? So what other skills are there? And so we're processing all that. And then we know that topics are really, how did the United States start? That's really what we're going to be going after from the lens of what I need to be doing from a content perspective. But how we go about it is them giving me feedback. And so we've had some good suggestions, and we're going to talk about it more tomorrow. And then I'm going to have some time to gear up for it once they give me enough good ideas, because we have Thanksgiving coming and we can get another unit started, and they will have participated in the process of what we're going to do next. So I think those are some of the elements around the idea, the things you're asking about building relationships and about like. Okay, forward.
Joe, you broke up a little bit there, but
yeah,
I think we got the main idea. And as you were talking, I had a response all lined up, and then as you start talking, my response kind of got shattered because of some of the things that you say, and then I had to rethink it. But one of the things I really I want to get back to is this idea of having kids for more than 1 year. Unfortunately, I have kids for only a quarter, but I have them 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And I've been doing my class now. This is my 3rd year. So I believe that I've had the 7th graders for 3 years. Next year, they'll be the first class that I've had for 4. And I think that one thing that's interesting, so I have to get to know my kids. I only have 10 weeks with them. If I didn't know them before, I have to get to know them, pretty quick. And that the pressure was added this year because we had a luncheon that we had to do all the cooking and preparation for. And I had to do that with a brand new class of students, right? And so a lot of people, I think, including me, believe that you have to spend all this time talking about norms and agreements. And, we agreed on our norms and agreements pretty quickly. And then we got right into it. And we got right into it by saying, look, we realize this is a big challenge for you. And we're going to give you all the support and structure you need. And let's have at it. And I think the kids demonstrated a great deal of responsibility. And part of the reason we could do that was that the standards have stayed relatively similar from year to year, and that we're also employing activities and routines that we also do year to year. So Kevin talked about, traditions. And one of the things that I'm trying to build into my program is to identify units or activities. And Kyle, this is what I would say to some of those younger teachers that are high engagement. And then you kind of stick with those. You don't, put them away. You stick with those and try and do them, year on year, and try and get better each year that you do it. And that creates some of that tradition and culture, but it also creates a lot of the expectations. It also reminds me, Joe, when you were talking, that we have one young person in my class who I think has been challenged in other academic areas where they have to sit still for long periods of time and listen a lot. And this kid is, blowing us away with their ability to work collaboratively and with groups and in a project-based environment. And that's one of the things that I really notice quite a bit, is that when you give kids the opportunity to do projects, you can see a whole different set of skills and dispositions that can become apparent. And I feel like that's an incredible way to build relationships. And when you're supporting a kid who's a super hard worker, we have kids who are just really hard workers. And then you can sit them down and say, you're just dynamite over here working in this area, and we can apply those same transferable skills in your academics, and you're going to see the same type of success. And I think kids get that, when you can show them this is what you do with your hands, this is what you do with your brain, but it's the same transferable skills. And I think that's a way of supporting students who may be disengaged from the traditional classroom. And speaking of those types of students, I just want to transition into our next question, and that is, we talked about routines, we talked about high stakes, we talked about engagement. What are folks doing? How are you thinking about trauma-informed instruction when you're building your daily classes, when you are looking at your units? Kevin mentioned this a little bit. He's got this theater unit where it starts out as chaotic and there's a purpose. Some kids do well in that, some kids that might be difficult. And so what are folks doing related to these trauma-informed practices that we've discussed before to ensure that students who may have challenges in school have an opportunity to flourish in your area? And I'm going to again let anybody who wants to start, and then we'll see where the conversation takes us.
I can jump in and just start with an idea, because I'll probably be pretty short. But I think that, the first thing that comes to my mind is two things that we've already talked about. One is to have really clear and specific structures, routines, and expectations in place, because there's a safety in that, right? If students know what to expect, if students are in an environment that feels safe to them, they're more willing to take risks, kind of across the board. So really not taking on that kind of learning, that kind of opportunity immediately at the beginning of the year until you've had a chance to establish that kind of culture in your classroom, and really taking the time to build those things with your community, I think is important, to be patient. And when you feel like you've gotten to that place that people are understanding this is how we do business as a collective, then you can jump in and start doing some of those project-based units and those things that are maybe going to require a little bit more risk-taking or feel a little less comfortable and a little more chaotic. And I also think that, it's the flexible pathways piece is really critical here. Since you mentioned Act 77 earlier, how does everybody have an opportunity to engage in whatever it is that we're doing in a way that makes sense for them? So I'm sure that in Kevin's unit there, it's not everybody is an actor, right? It's not that everybody's a script writer or reading aloud or any of that kind of thing. There's that behind the scenes piece and so by offering those flexible pathways and thinking about how can students still practice valuable skills, kind of alluding to what Joe was talking about earlier, collaborating with them and asking them, okay, so what is it that feels right for you, and what skills can you practice while you're doing that, so that we can keep monitoring your growth, we can keep making sure that you're progressing, but also not putting you in a position where you're going to be set up for failure. So those are a couple of things that popped into my mind right away in hearing that. So thank you all for all the content that I shared.
I can go. I was thinking about, wait, Don, let me just get the question again, because I want to, I think it is about some of the things that we've talked about the predictability and the routines. I think also, especially now at this point in the year, we do have a better handle on, some of our students and what their needs are. And some students that I'm thinking about in particular right now are students that have experienced significant trauma. And one of the things I'm trying to balance is helping them see themselves as competent and capable. Sometimes the narrative that they reiterate for themselves is, and you see it in the anxiety that they display in the classroom, that can sometimes lead to behaviors, is they don't see themselves as being able to do what everyone else is doing. And so trying to be really transparent about you can do this, and I'm going to give you this, safe little moment in time. So I think for some kids, they see our hour classes and it just feels like a lot of time. And so one of the things I do universally for the kids is we break everything up into 20 minutes. So it's like, here's a set amount of time, and having them even just decide on their whiteboard table, here's the 2 or 3 things that I need to do right now. And for one student, like, they have not produced much in my class yet this year. And today there's been a shift for their schedule a little bit. And I was like, dude, sit down. You can do this, right? Like, get this done. And he actually wrote quite a bit. And so I think some of that is just changing the narrative for him and for this particular student. And trying to reduce that negative thinking, right? Trying to change the self-talk. And we also just having built-in movement breaks and opportunities to meet needs as best we can. For some kids, that means like putting on headphones and being able to work independently. For others, it means sitting in a preferred spot, as long as there's still negotiated sense of calm in the space, that seems to work.
Happy to chime in. Kyle, you had mentioned with our units, especially the bigger project-based ones that we end up doing, it's like, just making sure there's always access points for everybody. You alluded to it in our theater unit. It's not just actors or actresses on the stage. We offer everybody a choice. We send out a survey to see if they want to work the pipes and pin rails and make sure the flats are coming in and out, or work on the costume design, or work on, we have kids running the soundboard and the light booth, or be in a leadership role, the stage manager. So everybody's involved in some capacity that really brings up their strengths or allows them to take really healthy risk, which is something, again, we're like, we should try to do that in everything that we do in the school. Don, when you first brought this question up, I immediately went to Alex Vennett's book, that Trauma-Informed Equity-Centered Education. And there's one chapter where she focuses on these 4 tenets of like a true like trauma-informed system in your classroom, that ever since I read that chapter, I had the poster written down on my desk. And it's like, make sure everything, you have predictability, flexibility, connection, and empowerment. She's like, if you have each one of those things kind of happening, are there at the forefront of your mind, like you're hopefully leading toward or creating a trauma-informed system. And there can be predictability even within, I feel like, our team, we're so unpredictable with schedule changes we have, but there's like a predictability in that, like we will always have a check-in in the morning and make sure we're all on the same page and go over the agenda and check in with just how everybody's doing. And we're really purposeful about being as communicative as we can with those students' paras. If a student has a one-on-one, just making sure everybody's in the loop with what we're doing and the why we're doing it. And giving students flexibility and space where it's like, if things are going to get a little hectic around here, take those breaks, let's making sure we're checking in with them personally, and giving them the space to take time for themselves. So those are all things that, again, I write it down and think about, like the lessons I'm doing, the tasks we're doing, just the way we're going about day to day, where are those tenants coming up, like where are we doing well, and where are our areas of growth with those 4 pieces as well, because we have tons of room for growth every time. So it kind of keeps us honest to it, which is always helpful.
Joe?
I think of the word competence when I was trying to think of how to talk about this. We need, as the adults, we need to feel competent that we can be successful in dealing with the situations that young people bring to us in the settings that we have. And that's probably, for me, that's the biggest challenge, because we have these structures where there are social workers and there's counselors and there's just support staff in the classroom. And we all need to be on the same page, and we need to be supporting ourselves so that we can turn around, supporting each other so we can then turn around and be competent in meeting the needs of the young people. And I think there's been a fair amount of adjustment in the last few years to try to do that. But when we do that, when we are competent as adults and we are providing those 4 tenets that Kevin's talking about pretty consistently, then the young people feel more comfortable in the room because they want to feel competent as well. And that's really our task, I think, is creating space for them to feel like they're participating in a way that makes them feel like they're being successful and they're moving from one place to another on a line that is positive, and they're feeling like they got more that's going for them than they did before. And in order to be able to do that, because of the situations that our young people are in, we need to have those relationships with all the other people who are involved in their lives so that we can be aware and catch when things are starting to change for them. And so having the counselors meet with us every other day, meeting with the social workers when we need to, having time to meet with the support staff, and being able to use that time to actually focus on the young people in their situations and what we're seeing. Those are structural things that can lead to trauma-informed practice.
Thank you very much. Just one thing that came up as a kind of a connection is this idea. I go back to some basic principles of my teaching practice, including scaffolding. So I ask our students, we do a lot of projects and we cook a lot. We're in the kitchen a lot, making food for the community. And I ask kids to reflect, but we give them some pretty highly structured and scaffolded graphic organizers so that students don't really need to be, you don't have to be a fantastic writer to complete a reflection. And then my idea is that once kids get the pattern of it, then I release freedom to them as writers. But those scaffolds, I think, and walking them through the steps in a pretty specific order, and it's organized, it's intentional, and I think that gives kids the opportunity to relax. We include sentence starters, we include word banks, we include transitions. It's old school scaffolding so that students can do it and not feel like it's so much of a challenge that they refuse. So that's one piece. And then this is sort of probably up for debate. One of the things that we talk about, I realized pretty quickly that our program requires kids to be good at specific skills: collaboration, engagement, participation, working well with others, supporting classmates. And so those are some of our basic principles. I liked how Kyle said, this is how we do business. And rather than get into these debates about grouping and who I want to work with, and you put up the groups and somebody inevitably says, instead I tell them right at the outset, I put the roster into random.org. I'm going to randomize your groups every single time that we're going into the kitchen, that you're working with people, or we're doing projects, because we're not focused on who you're with. We're focused on the skills and the success of the group. Again, I don't know if that's a great approach, but to me, what it does is it removes sort of some of the personal, interpersonal things that can happen at this level. And instead it says, look, I just need you to finish this, product, or to get this accomplished. And these are the skills you need to be practicing to do that. And it's been actually fairly successful, especially when we explain why we're doing it and the fact that your group's going to change every day. For some kids, that's awesome. For other kids, it's like, oh, I had a great group today. Who knows what, tomorrow is going to look like. But it's a strategy that I'm trying out. And I think that's important. The other piece that I also wanted to just mention really quickly is that that predictability and empowerment that Kevin was talking about, that can allow you, I think, to demonstrate that competence. And, if you have those routines and kids get into those routines, especially as I have my kids 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, that allows them to kind of be able to come in and just, okay, these are the ground rules. I already know and understand them. Let's get to work. And I think that can be a relief for kids who oftentimes, I believe, are having to interpret the rules for each given learning community that they go through, especially if they have a lot of transitions during the day. And that can be, difficult for kids, and it can be difficult for kids who have experienced trauma. So that's something that I'm also thinking about in my practice. I really appreciate everybody's thoughtful commentary. And, Kyle, you're talking about young teachers. It's interesting when you look at the range of teachers in different schools. At our elementary school, 1/3 of the teachers are 10 years and fewer of experience. 1/3 of them are 10 to 17 years, and 1/3 of them seem to be 18 years. And so they have a really good spread of veterans to new teachers. And a lot of schools are not like that. A lot of schools, as you mentioned, have a ton of new folks and then, some wily veterans. And so seeing how we're supporting all those different teachers and this conversation, we've talked about a lot of things that seem to me are teaching 101, right? Routines, schedules, what are the standards? What are we doing? Joe talked about empowering students, and I really appreciate everybody's insight. We're at 4:05, and I want to close today just by asking this question. In your learning community, as you look across the next month or so, what's one thing that you are looking to work on, sort of like that glow and that grow? What are you excited to be working on? What's going well? What are you're excited about that? And then maybe what's an area of growth that you're looking to? So a glow and a grow. And our next conversation is going to be on December 14th, I believe. And we're going to be talking about restorative practices. So Kyle, we hope you're available for that. But again, as we kind of enter this sort of the holiday period where there's a lot of breaks, what are a glow and a grow? And I'll let you folks chime in. The uncomfortable silence is very familiar to me in my classes, and it doesn't seem to go away.
I'm always that kid that just jumps right in, so I'll do it again. One thing I'm excited about is I got to spend the day earlier this week with a bunch of folks talking about place-based learning and just thinking about how can we recenter ourselves in the opportunities of who we are, where we are, and how we can benefit from this place in which we live. And so I'm really excited to collaborate with some of the teachers from across the district on how can we offer some equitable opportunities to students across our schools in terms of engaging with their community, bringing the community in, getting them out into it, despite the cold, despite the winter, just jumping in and thinking about how we can better utilize the things that are here amongst us as part of our educational journey. So that's a glow, I think, that we've got people who are invested in that process, and we've got lots of great examples to look at. I'm looking down my screen at Joe right now, but to model that kind of work and thinking about how to use our place as part of that. I think one area that we're going to have to look at in terms of continuing to grow is I've been sort of on my soapbox about how we can better bring students into the process of monitoring their own growth as learners and thinking about how do we give them the tools and resources they need to be an active part of that, and doing the self-assessment, being able to set those attainable goals for themselves, those kinds of things. That's an area that we've struggled with for a long time. And so trying to come up with some structures that will help to make that happen is an area of growth for us.
I can go real quick. Oh, sorry, Joe, did I cut you off? No, okay. I'm just coming out of conferences. I have like 2 or 3 more, and gosh, I love that opportunity to sit down with families. You just learn so much. It's students run their conference. So they talk about what they're feeling good about, and then areas that they want to focus on. And so the glow is just as those days make for long days and lots of hours, and you can get anxious in terms of how's it going to go. At the end, it just feels like such a lovely process. And I would say the grow is around, I'm actually really excited to go to the December 7th piece, because I'm really eager to figure out how to get back to align more with personalized learning. And just coming off of conferences, I really want to find a better way to formalize the personalization. And I wonder what that might look like in the units that I develop moving forward. Is there a thread that I can be more intentional about? I haven't, I think I've lost a little bit from COVID and just the structure of things. And so I'm really eager to get back to some system that helps double downs on personalization.
Unmuted. I'm trying. Oh, here we are. I unmuted. All right. So the glow is, I'm fortunate we're heading into the last stretch of 2 years. And so this is all gravy, just working with the young people. It's been work, definitely work, but now we get to go through that whole process of, we're getting ready, we're fine tuning, we're getting ready for the next big step in your lives. Let's work on it together. And it's a lot of fun. The part that I want to continue to work on and try to get better at is, one of the things that happened with COVID is we all got into our own little boxes as adults. And we're all trying to figure out how are we going to best do our job. But in my case anyway, I shed a lot of other things as a result of that. And so something I'm trying to get back at and get better at is reconnecting with all of the folks that are also working with these young people, because every connection that I make with adults who are working with the same population makes my interactions with young people better. And I've relearned that, I guess, coming out of COVID. And it's something I want to keep trying to do more
of. For me, the glow, I know I've been talking about some of our traditions, like the project-based bigger pieces that are super messy, but just super valuable. I love that we're getting back to those. And we have another one coming up after the break, right before the winter break. We do a big poetry slam. We have like a kind of mini poetry unit, and it's every year just gives me goosebumps. We see like so many students take a super healthy risk, and they go into that being like, I don't think I'm going to share my poem. And then they do, and they see and the whole Swift House community gets so behind everybody who's taking that risk. And it's such a celebration of just putting yourself out there, and super positive, and just sends us into break with that good feeling of our community. So that I love that. And I love that that's coming up. We already have some of our 7th, 8th graders asking about it, which is great too, because then the 5th and 6th graders are getting hyped for it to see their energy and excitement. So that's definitely a glow. My grow, it's funny, I do some group fitness and instructing outside of school, and we've been, as a staff, really focused on let's focus on our members' goals and what their goals are, and let's come back to that while we're in our classes. I'm that'd be such a great thing to think about teaching, really knowing the students' PLP goals, and how often can we touch into those during our different classes? Hey, remember, got that PLP goal around this. This is a great opportunity to shine and show evidence for that. And it's I think I can, step up in a lot of ways there to keep that connection really fluid and really alive, for these students to be feeling, again, the power of the PLP and why it's so valuable. So, which will lead to that engagement piece I was bringing up earlier as well, which is the ultimate goal.
Thank you, everybody. Just to connect to Kevin, Jeff Kinney, the author of Diary of a Wimpy Kid, came to Main Street Middle School, and he talked here probably 8 or 9 years ago. And he said something that stuck with me. he had a room outside of his studio, and he used to say he just used to lay on this couch thinking of ideas and thinking of ideas. But when he walked into his studio, there was a number on the above the door, and that number was something like 1700, and those were the number of pages that he knew he would have to draw to get a book, a final book, right? And every time he walked into the studio, he would touch that number, just like Notre Dame touches that Play Like Champions today, because you have to have your goals visible. If your goals aren't visible and you're not reminded of them on a regular basis, it makes it a lot harder to achieve them. So one of the things, one of my goals is I want to spend this time between now and the holiday break celebrating with students. And I want to be celebrating them as individuals, but also celebrating our team accomplishments. And that's going to look like, some eating. That's going to look like getting together as a community and having just celebrations and acknowledging the great work that our students are doing. I think that's important, especially for some of our students who might be going out back into some less structured environments, and that's important for me, is to make them feel how important they are and how great their work is, both to our classroom and also the community. That sense of belonging, this idea of belonging, has come up quite a bit, and I just want to make sure kids understand how much we're counting on them and what a great job they're doing. And then my grow is, I feel like at this stage in my career, I need to go back and start looking at the more nuts and boltsy things that I might be, oh yeah, I can do that because I've done it this way forever. And so how can I reflect on my practice, and how can I dial in some of the things that I want to be improving? And one of those things is like a rubric for leadership skills. So I have an example, and I want to put that into student-friendly language so that kids can start figuring out, what are the transferable leadership skills that I can take from this program out into other classes and out into the world. And, developing leadership, I think, is something that we need to be doing the way the world is changing. And we're going to need to empower kids to be making decisions that are equitable, fair, and just. And creating, good leadership standards, I think, is one way of doing that. So that's on my list of to-do things. Also on my list of to-do things is to enjoy our coming break. And I just want to let all of you know how much I appreciate your professionalism and your dedication and commitment. It's something that motivates me, and I really deeply appreciate it. And I hope that you have a wonderful, relaxing, and enjoyable break. This is the first break after quite a long stretch. And you guys are awesome. I appreciate it. And again, I hope you get a chance to spend time with those who you care about, and you enjoy it. And just before we go, December 14th is our next middle grades conversation. December 7th is the personalized learning Act 77 at the State House. I put the Eventbrite link in the script. And then lastly, the VAMLY is having their March 12th, the VAMLY conference, and they are looking for students to present. So if you have students who are working on equity issues, there's a call out there for presentations. Meg, do you want to talk at all about that, or?
No, that's perfect, Don. Just, we're eager, especially schools. Oftentimes schools set a plan at the VAMLY conference about an action plan that they want to bring back to their schools. So we know that schools are doing lots of things, and it might seem small, but it's valid. And so if there's a group of students that want to share some of the success that they've had with a project or a group or an event, we'd love to hear from them.
Yeah, and I'm bringing that up now because I think that you want to know about those fairly soon. Is that correct?
Exactly. We're establishing our workshops and our breakout sessions, and so if there's folks that are eager to present, reaching out to Dave Brown would be great. Yeah, or to Kyle, or to me, whoever. Yeah, that'd be great.
Perfect. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful break. We'll talk to you soon. And thanks for all the work you do on behalf of our students and communities. Take care.
Thanks, you guys. Thanks so much.